Nuclear bombs. They brought in a new era, a new way we wage war, think about society, and relate to other countries. Yet with all the fear they've generated, they're not even close to one of the worst weapons possible. These are 10 weapons worse than a nuclear bomb. Number 10, kinetic bombardment, also known as rods from God. Kinetic bombardment, or kinetic orbital strike, is the hypothetical act of attacking a planetary surface with an inert projectile. The destructive force comes solely from the kinetic energy of the projectile impacting at very high speed. The typical depiction of the tactic is of a satellite containing a magazine of tungsten rods. When a strike is ordered, the launch vehicle breaks one of the rods out of its orbit into a suborbital trajectory that intersects the target. Kinetic bombardment has the advantage of being able to deliver projectiles from a very high angle at a very high speed, making them incredibly difficult to defend against. In addition, projectiles do not require explosive warheads, and in the simplest designs would consist entirely of solid metal rods. The Outer Space Treaty is designed to prohibit weapons of mass destruction in orbit or outer space. However, its text does not formally define what constitutes a weapon of mass destruction. Since the most common form of kinetic ammunition is inert tungsten rods, it's uncertain whether kinetic bombardment is actually prohibited by the treaty. The only thing really stopping us from doing it at this point is its cost prohibitive. A tungsten rod that's about 20 feet long and the same weight as an equivalent nuclear bomb does about the same amount of damage, with a kinetic energy equivalent of approximately 11.5 tons of TNT. But it's not cost effective, but we can thank SpaceX for making it so. Couple Falcon Heavies, couple rods from God. It'll be easy as pie to set up those satellites. Thank you, Elon. And just so you know, it's not entirely hypothetical. During the Vietnam War, there was a limited use of the Lazy Dog bomb, which was a steel projectile shaped like a normal bomb, but much smaller. These small, inert bombs were dumped from aircraft onto enemy troops and had the same effect as a machine gun fired vertically. Observers visiting a battlefield after an attack said it looked like the ground had been tenderized using a giant fork. Bodies had been penetrated longitudinally from shoulder to lower abdomen. Number 9, thermobaric weapons. A thermobaric weapon is a type of explosive that uses the oxygen from the surrounding air to generate a high temperature explosion. And in best practice, the blast wave typically produced by such a weapon is of a significantly longer duration than that produced by a conventional condensed explosive. Thermobaric weapons are significantly more energetic than conventional condensed explosives of equal weight. They are considerably more destructive when used against field fortifications, foxholes, tunnels, bunkers, and caves, or buildings. And there are many types of thermobaric weapons, some that can be fitted to handheld launchers. In a quote from the Human Rights Watch report of 2000, the kill mechanism against living targets is unique and unpleasant. Kills is the pressure wave, and more importantly, the subsequent vacuum that ruptures the lungs. Victims are severely burned and will probably also inhale the burning fuel. According to a CIA study, the effect of a thermobaric explosion within confined spaces is immense. Those near the ignition point are obliterated. Those at the fringe are likely to suffer many internal and thus invisible injuries. The shock and pressure waves cause minimal damage to brain tissue, so it's possible that victims are not rendered unconscious by the blast, but instead suffer for several minutes while they suffocate. Literally sucks the air out of the room in a pressure wave. Now imagine one of these, the size of a semi-truck parked at Times Square. Boom! Watchmen. Number 8, the cobalt bomb. A cobalt bomb is a type of salted bomb. It's a nuclear weapon designed to produce enhanced amount of radioactive fallout, intended to contaminate a large area with radioactive material. This is obviously worse because that makes the area much more dangerous for a much longer period of time, and the fallout spreads much farther. This isn't just a nuclear bomb, this is a nuclear bomb plus 2. It's considered a doomsday device. The concept of the bomb was described by Leo Szilard in 1950. His intent was not to propose that something be built like this, but to show that nuclear weapon technology would soon reach the point where it could end human life, a doomsday device. Salted weapons were then requested by the US Air Force and seriously investigated, but never deployed. The Russian Federation, though, has allegedly developed cobalt warheads. However, many commentators doubt that this is a real project and see it as more likely to be staged to leak to the United States to cause panic. Number 7, biological warfare. Biological warfare, also known as germ warfare, is the use of biological toxins or infectious agents like bacteria and viruses with the intent to kill or incapacitate humans. Bioweapons are living organisms or replicating entities. Viruses are not technically considered alive, that produce or replicate within their host victims. Insect warfare is also considered a type of biological weapon. Biological weapons may be employed in various ways to gain a strategic or or tactical advantage over the enemy, either by threat or actual deployment. Biological weapons are useful as area of denial weapons. These agents may be lethal or non-lethal and may be targeted against a single individual, a group of people, or even an entire population. Fox die. They may be developed, acquired, stockpiled, or deployed by nation sites or by non-national groups. The use of biological weapons is prohibited under customary international humanitarian law. The use of biological agents in an armed conflict is a war crime. These are not under the same category as nuclear weapons, but they're still considered weapons of mass destruction. Goodbye, entire species of animal. Goodbye, single person. Oops, it mutated. Goodbye, everyone else.
Before I reveal the most amazing example, I'd like to remind you to subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. We upload amazing fact-filled list videos daily. Also, make sure to click that bell icon to stay updated, or you'll regret on missing out on some amazing knowledge that could have filled your brain.
Number 6. Chemical warfare. Chemical warfare involves using the toxic properties of chemical substances as weapons. This type of warfare is distinct from nuclear warfare and biological warfare, and is also considered a weapon of mass destruction. Many nations possessed vast stockpiles of weaponized agents in preparation for wartime use. The Hague Declaration of 1899 and the Hague Convention of 1907 forbade the use of poison or poisoned weapons in warfare, yet more than 120,000 tons of gas were produced by the end of World War I. The French were the first to use chemical weapons during the First World War, using tear gases. They likely did not realize that the effects may be more serious under wartime conditions than in riot control. Official figures declare about 1.3 million casualties directly caused by chemical warfare agents during the course of the war. These agents are chlorine, phosphine, and mustard gas. An estimated 200,000 casualties were civilians. Civilians rarely had a warning system put into place to alert their neighbors of the danger. In addition to poor warning systems, civilians often didn't have effective access to gas masks. After the war, the most common method of disposal was dumping chemical weapons into the nearest largest body of water. Over time, the containers corrode and the chemicals leaked out. On the sea floor at low temperatures, mustard gas tends to form lumps with a skin of chemical byproducts. These lumps wash onto the shore where they look like chunks of waxy yellowish clay. They're incredibly toxic. Number 5, a diamond meteorite. Now hear me out. There are meteorites all around us all the time, and we're actually working on programs to try and wrangle meteorites in order to be able to mine them. If we can wrangle a meteorite, we can control its trajectory. If we can control its trajectory, we can make it hit Earth. I can't think of something more destructive than a diamond meteorite. It's already got its own velocity, by the way. You don't even have to put a satellite into orbit like you do with the tungsten rods. It's got its own thing going. You don't believe me? Have you never played Planetary Annihilation? Boop, pretty much destroys everything. And it's diamond, so it's hard as f***. We don't even need it to be that big. Tungsten rods are only 20 feet long. All we need is a small meteorite, maybe 100 feet around. That's it. Solid diamond. Bam! Goodbye, continent. Take that, Australia. Number 4, a gene drive. A gene drive is a genetic engineering technology that can propagate a particular suite of genes throughout a population. Gene drives can arise through a variety of mechanisms. They've been proposed to provide an effective means of genetically modifying specific populations and entire species. This technique can employ adding, deleting, disrupting, or modifying genes. Gene drives affect only sexually reproducing species, excluding viruses or bacteria. Applications already in works include exterminating insects that carry pathogens, notably mosquitoes, controlling invasive species, or eliminating herbicide or pesticide resistance. As with any potentially powerful technique, gene drives can be misused in a variety of ways. For example, a gene drive intended to affect only a local population might spread across an entire species. This is biological warfare on a whole nother level. It doesn't have to be warfare. They can take the nasty characteristics right out of your body, right out of your family lineage. No more violence, no more free thought, no more issues with authority. Gone. Number 3, antimatter weapons. An antimatter weapon is a possible device using antimatter as a power source, a propellant, or an explosive for a weapon. Antimatter weapons cannot yet be produced due to the current cost of production of antimatter, although we can produce it at $63 trillion per gram. Also, the fact that it annihilates upon touching ordinary matter makes it very difficult to contain. The paramount advantage of such a theoretical weapon is that antimatter and matter collisions result in the entire sum of their mass energy equivalent being released as energy, which is an order of magnitude greater than the energy release of most efficient fusion weapons. Annihilation requires and converts exactly equal masses of antimatter and matter by the collision, which releases the energy mass of both. Smaller weapons are more economically feasible. A modern Mk3 hand grenade contains 227 grams of TNT. 1/1000th of a gram of positrons contain as much energy as 83 pounds of TNT, making the cost of a positron hand grenade, which is 10/trillionth of a gram of antimatter, which is a hand grenade equivalent, that could be fitted into a sniper's bullet, only $600,000. $100,000. Antimatter-catalyzed nuclear pulse propulsion proposes the use of antimatter as a trigger to initiate small nuclear explosions. These explosions would theoretically provide thrust to a spacecraft. The same technology could theoretically be used to make very small and possibly fission-free fallout weapons. Antimatter-catalyzed weapons are more discriminate and result in less long-term contamination, and might be more politically acceptable. The most dangerous thing about antimatter-triggered weapons is that they might make war cleaner, and therefore more of an option in the political arena. 2. Grey goo. Grey goo is a hypothetical end-of-the-world scenario involving molecular nanotechnology in which out-of-control self-replicating robots consume all biomass on Earth while building more of themselves. The original idea assumed machines were designed to have this capability, while popularizations have assumed that the machines might somehow gain this capability by accident. For instance, imagine a replicator being designed to clean up an oil spill. Instead of only eating hydrocarbons, it consumes all carbon and therefore consumes all carbon on Earth. As described by Eric Drexler in his book Engines of Creation from 1986, quote, imagine such a replicator floating in a bottle of chemicals, making copies of itself. The first replicator assembles a copy in 1,000 seconds. The 2 replicators then build 2 more in the next 1,000 seconds. 4 build 4, and 8 build another 8. At the end of 10 hours, there are not 36 new replicators, but over 68 billion. In less than a day, they would weigh a ton. In less than 2 days, they would outweigh the Earth. And in another 4 hours, they would exceed the mass of the Sun and all the planets combined. And number 1, possibly the most dangerous thing we could ever create is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, sometimes called machine intelligence, is demonstrated by machines, in contrast to the natural intelligence displayed by humans and other animals. The scope of AI is disputed, and as machines become increasingly capable, tasks considered as requiring intelligence are often removed from the definition, a phenomenon known as the AI effect. Capabilities generally classified as AI as of 2017 include understanding human speech, competing at the highest level in strategic game systems like chess and Go, autonomous cars, intelligent routing and content delivery networks, and military simulations.